Welcome everyone to today's event towards a quantum internet presented by SGInnovate and Center for Quantum Technologies. I am Zing from SGInnovate, and if you are new to us, we are a government-owned organization in Singapore with the mission to build deep tech innovations from Singapore for the world. We invest in and help build deep tech startups in the fields of artificial intelligence, medtech, and quantum tech, just to name a few. We work with entrepreneurial scientists and clinicians to help bring their innovative research from lab to market, and we also develop tech talents and engage with a vibrant deep tech ecosystem. Today, we are very happy to collaborate with our longtime partner, Center for Quantum Technology, to bring you today's event on the state of the art in quantum communication technology and the goals ahead. So without further ado, let me hand over the time to our moderator for today, Jenny Hogan, Associate Director, Outreach and Media Relations for the Center for Quantum Technology, to start us off. Jenny, please.
Good morning. Thank you, Ziying. And thank you everybody who's joining us today for the session on Towards the Quantum Internet. So I am from CQT, as Ziying just introduced. And even at this moment, we're all enjoying the benefits of today's internet connecting all of us around the world. So we're going to be speaking this morning about what a quantum internet might do for us in the future. You know, what advantages will it bring in security and eventually for computing? So we have three fantastic experts joining us for this session today. And before we get started, I'm just going to ask if they can each unmute themselves and briefly introduce who they are. And maybe we can go in the order that we're going to hear from you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Alexander Ling. I'm a principal investigator at the Center for Quantum Technologies at NUS.
Katsuro? Okay, maybe we will come back to you in a second, or let me introduce you. So Katsuro Ejima is QKD Business Development Manager from Toshiba Corporation. And then our third panelist.
Hello everyone. This is Chunyang from Spectral. We are a spin-off company from the Center for Quantum Technologies, looking at space-based QKD.
Okay, well, welcome to all of you, and thank you for making the time for this session. So just to outline today's program, we're going to start with two short talks from Alex and Katsuro that will give you an intro to quantum communications and how it works, and then some commercial perspectives on where we've got to. So please feel free to put your questions as we go along in the Q&A box that you'll find at the bottom of your Zoom panel. We're going to come back to those questions in the second half of the event after we've been through two presentations. So at this point, I'd like to hand over to Alex to bring us up to speed on what quantum communications is. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay. Let's see. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So good morning, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. It's a great pleasure to be here to share with you some of the exciting advances that the quantum science community is making around the world. So just to set the stage, I just want to start by giving everyone a brief idea about what quantum technology actually is. Now, you look at the history of industrial revolutions. Very often, when we discover a new model of physics, how we can describe things in a new way, we actually unlock new capability. And very often, this capability is not a small delta of what is of existing capability, but something that's completely different. And this is something that we've seen, throughout the ages when people invented steam engines, or when they invented electricity, or when they invented electronics and radio. Those things were all actually very different from each other. And they always brought new capability that was dramatically different, that could actually change many things and how people interact, how they did business, and how they could communicate. So in the last 100 years or so, we have now developed a new model of the universe called quantum physics. And more recently, in the last few decades, we've sort of understood how to apply some of those very interesting concepts from quantum physics into applicable technology. And that's what we're talking about today, quantum technology. So just to keep in mind, everyone, that quantum technology is not something that gives you a small delta in improvement in capability, but it's something that's going to change the paradigm of how information is processed and transferred. Very briefly, all of this capability actually revolves around a very simple fact. That is, you need to involve the manipulation of quantum information, or the quantum bit of information, the qubit. And if you can actually manipulate the qubit, we can roughly separate the applications into 3 pillars, in communications, in computing, or in metrology. And metrology is another word for sensing. And what's happening over here is that if you can actually manipulate the qubits, right, and store information inside the qubits, you can actually manipulate them in new ways. Because in quantum physics, this information is stored in a way that's treated as both a wave and a particle, and you can actually, put them together in very unique ways that conventional technology cannot do. And this is where we can unlock a lot of new possible capability. Now, let's focus on quantum communications. So in quantum communications, the main task is actually to transfer quantum signals, or qubits. And very often, the physical system of choice would be a particle of light called a photon. So what we want to do is we want to transfer photons from one location to another, okay? And sometimes we want to use them to connect individual quantum systems, such as atoms, ions, or superconducting circuits. And in this way, you can actually connect up, quantum computers, and they're sort of the building block of a quantum internet. At the same time, you can actually use this communication system perhaps to, improve your communication security. Now, a lot of the research that we have been doing, in the past few years is actually to work on the physical layer to understand how these qubits can actually be transferred in a way that's actually, safe and maintains the fidelity of the quantum state. But now we're starting to look also at, other aspects of a quantum network. For example, we want to understand how to optimize the network for some kind of end user application. And, there's lots of exciting ideas being explored right now. And for example, you can actually download some software where you can actually play around with what a quantum network could look like. And for example, I would recommend looking at this NetSquid, software. Now, coming back closer to what we can expect in the next few years, the quantum internet, where we transfer quantum information around the world and connect up quantum computers, is certainly very exciting. But we have to take baby steps towards the implementation of such a network. And one of the very first use cases that we think is going to be applicable is a concept known as quantum key distribution. And what we want to do over here is we want to use these quantum signals to actually connect 2 parties that want to communicate, and use these quantum signals as a means of generating a secret key between them. So this secret encryption key, right, would be the same on the 2 ends, so that if one of the parties wants to send some plain text over to the other party securely, they can use this encryption key to create a ciphertext that is actually unbreakable, even using a quantum computer. Okay, and this is one of the technologies that several companies around the world are trying to bring to market. And I think we'll hear more from our colleague Katsuro in the next talk about this. Now, just to briefly explain, what is the advantage of quantum key distribution for those who are not familiar with it, and what is the threat that we're trying to address? Well, the main threat that we're trying to address is that the current way a lot of the encryption keys are distributed is based on complex mathematics that we believe a conventional computer has problems in cracking. Well, unfortunately, it turns out that if we can build a quantum computer, then some of these mathematical problems that underpin our existing crypto system is not going to be safe anymore. So in this diagram over here, for example, I suggest that if you are looking at when a quantum computer becomes available, within a relatively short time, the existing public key infrastructure could be broken, and then you will lose the communication privacy. And the idea then would be to try and extend the time in which you can actually enjoy communication privacy by using quantum key distribution with other symmetric encryption systems like AES, or maybe a one-time pad. And the real value question that we're trying to address nowadays is, for example, how long must this time to the secrets being broken using quantum key distribution before it becomes a meaningful, investment for the end user. This is a very interesting question, which very often, quantum physicists alone cannot answer, and we actually need to engage industry and end users to actually understand what's actually required. Now, just to give you guys a brief idea of some of the activities in quantum key distribution that's happening around the world. There's lots of networks that's being built, including here in Singapore. For example, and the National University of Singapore has been working with Singtel, where we've been testing deployed fiber around the island. For example, over here, we have a little optical fiber loop that runs out of the university, goes across Western Singapore and comes back to the university so that we can test how this deployed fiber can perform for quantum key distribution. There are plans in New York, for example, to link up financial centers with data centers and to ensure that the IP that's being transferred in these links are secured using quantum key distribution. And there are also numerous other examples from around the world. Now, a lot of this technology that we talk about will involve quantum key distribution using optical fibers. But it turns out that you can't use optical fibers to actually build a global quantum key distribution system. And that means also you cannot use optical fibers to build a global quantum internet. And the main reason for this is that optical fibers, good as they are still pretty lossy. And so, we don't have a quantum repeater that can actually regenerate the signal. And so after a few hundred kilometers, you will actually, lose all that quantum signal if it was going through an optical fiber. So the way to try and overcome this problem, we believe, is actually to use free space systems, for example, satellites in space, and use them to actually transmit quantum signals and relay the quantum signals between different parts of the Earth. This is actually possible. Our Chinese colleagues have a very nice spacecraft called Mischius. It has what we call an entangled photon pair source. It has 2 telescopes on it, and it has been used very successfully to demonstrate a lot of the quantum internet primitives that we are interested in. In Singapore, my research team more recently has launched a small satellite called Spooky-1. This is a 3U CubeSat which carries also an entangled photon pair source, and it was used to demonstrate the fact that small satellites, although they are very scarce in resources, can also be used as a host for complex quantum technology. Now, this Spooky-1 satellite doesn't yet have a telescope. Okay, it's just used as a demonstrator for quantum technology in space. But we are working towards solutions where we can actually have a telescope and we can actually beam these quantum signals down to the ground. So I just want to end my talk here and just say, we already have a lot of the building blocks in place for both quantum key distribution networks, and also we should begin to think about how to also implement some of the quantum internet ideas that we think have a lot of benefits. So my concluding message to everyone would be, let's start working together and let's start building these quantum networks. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. So let's start building. I know that our next speaker, they have already been doing some building. So Katsuro, let me hand over to you and you can bring us through where the commercial perspectives are taking us.
Hi. Can everyone see my screen?
And we don't see your slides yet.
Okay, so yes.
Now they're there. If you just move to full presentation mode.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so hello everyone, hello Singapore, hello Asia folks. Today, thank you for attending to the this event, and I'm very pleased to meet you and speak to you here to talk about quantum key distribution, or QKD, and for today's market and the future outlook. So this is a typical notice, and you may check later. So let me start with what threat we are you're going to see. So as Alex said, it's quantum computer is going to be very powerful to disable the current key system. So actually hackers are really trying to steal your data on the fly over the communication line. So they tapped into it, then steal the data and decrypt and to see your data immediately when super quantum computing comes. It is technically possible. And also even today, so you need to be aware, so harvesting, that is a different technique hacker tend to use. So hackers steal your data now and store it, then decrypt when very powerful supercomputer or compact supercomputer come later. Therefore, if your data is valuable for years and have to keep confidential for years, 5 years, 10 years, even more, you need to protect your data for now. Otherwise, your data may be decrypted without the knowledge in a year later. Okay, so you need to deal with those threats. So technically, we have two solutions. So quantum key distribution and then post-quantum cryptography. So it's a different technology. So QKD is a physics-based. PQC is a math-based. So essentially speaking, so physics-based QKD is a completely safe and currently only proven solution today. And even more powerful computers, quantum computers comes, still this technology is effective and robust enough to protect your data. So I can't say it's forever, but at the foreseeable horizon of the current technology, future technology, still QKD remain safe and effective for many, many years to come. And the PQC, that is essentially mass evolution of the current mass-based algorithm. So it's now US NIST standard body is now testing, and in the next several years, I think 2024, they're going to finalize and certificate, and they may pick a few, and so that is certified. Then you may replace the current algorithm with those. So it's easy to use, but also that is the mass. Therefore, as computing power goes, it would need to evolve again. So, but it's going to be relatively safe. So I'm not saying this is different and this is not competing. This is going to be complementary. It's both technology has good side of it. So, but today I'm talking about QKD. So QKD has been advanced, as Alex mentioned. So now billions of dollars has invested all over the world, and now past decade R&D, this technology was born in R&D, now tested, and now commercially available. So Toshiba is also working for the couple of decades, and now is deploying in the multiple and actual use cases. So now world is ready to deploy this QKD technology more global manner. So now, QKD commercial market is now about, kicking in. So from, QKD system and perspective, now, QKD system is available for several few vendors from Switzerland and China, and now startups coming in, and the Toshiba is going to support those systems in the next quarter. So in a rough estimate of the market, according to our research firm, so currently tens of billions, but in the next decade, it's going to be 3 digits more, and I expected the billions. As you know, this technology is going to be widely used and matured. And in addition to the systems, so interestingly, QKD services is now has been available, and US startups with quantum exchanges now offering services rather than investing your own proprietary system. So those services is help you to try and spend your investment to the keys, quantum key as needed. So it's an interesting move. And so we see satellite and terrestrial free space QKD services on the way in the next few years, probably as early as 2022 or 23, as technology is evolving, as Alex mentioned. So that is going to be very encouraging to play a very key role for very long distance and for international, QKD network. So market is evolving. So it's coming quickly. So now I'd like to briefly touch on Toshiba's systems. We just introduced it, and you can visit our website for the details. But the really, 2 pieces. It's a very high key rate and the long range in the world record, as far as I'm aware, and now also has a very advancing feature such as multiplexing that really eliminate your cost to spend on a 5S, because quantum data and control data that is multiplied over single 5S. Therefore, you can eliminate the number of the 5S. Also, this system has a standard API, therefore easy to use. And currently, we are working on regional certificate, so availability is come by region, quarter on quarter. But going forward, we are also looking for QKD platform to work with QKD's service provider in each key regions. So, so QKD need to be networked, then that really help a lot of users to use point A to B and a multiple point and a more global manner. And that is what we envision, and we are working to develop hardware, software, and the middleware to enable those solutions. So that is not available today, but we are working with a partner to enable those in the next few years. And in Singapore and the Asian Pacific, it's a very interesting area for us. And we are going to talk about later, but we are in a collaboration with Spectral of Singapore. So CEO Chuan is going to speak later. So help you government and the enterprises to try QKD and deploy to get ready for the deployment. And also, so Chunya and we have shared the vision and our technology cross the road in the future from terrestrial to the satellite for a more globally seamless solution. So now we are working to make our solutions interoperable to build those networks. And in Japan, we have been participating in a lot of testing, trials. Now, after the years of trial in Tokyo QKD or Tokyo networks, now we are working within the Japanese government and the National Institute and the universities and the industrial companies to move up to the next step to develop and enhance the technologies for networks. So rather than point to point or point to much, networking is critical. So that is in the next few years to complete. And we are working in other Asian Pacific region, and that is we see those is the emerging market. Therefore, we are now looking for a regional partner to work together. So in the future, so as I mentioned, those technologies, those are area of technologies we believe that is going to be useful and practical. So it's a link technology, the network, to build a network, then link the network, that is a leading network. And a trusted node, that to extend the reach and the more robust solution. And also quantum relay, that is challenging, but that really help QKD more flexible to extend the reach. And the wider network. So it's not only just technology, but also software technology or to manage the entire network. So it's in a business uses or applicable uses. So in the management software, network management is very going to be critical. But here the point is, a single company or single person cannot enable it. So we need to collaboration regardless of industry. So government, institute, enterprises, we need to all together. Then we have provided a solution for the people, government, enterprises to protect data. So data is a lifeline. So that is our mission to complete. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Katsuro, for introducing Toshiba's work here. Can I invite Chunyang and Alex to come back? Thank you. So thank you very much for our two speakers for getting us started on this topic. Before we start asking more questions, Chunyang, can I just invite you to tell us a little bit about your background in QKD?
Yeah, sure. So again, my name is Chunyang from Spectral. Ejima-san from Toshiba touched a lot on kind of the fiber-based QKD. At Spectral, we have a very kind of razor-sharp focus to address a long-distance key distribution problem. Particularly, we plan to use satellites to distribute these encryption keys, and the vision is to deliver those encryption keys to users anywhere on Earth. Again, in the whole context of things, this is again is not an easy technology, even for the fiber-based QKD deployment and rollout. But we do believe that the market will evolve such that that global network will come to fruition, and it takes steps to build to that kind of vision of the future. So happy to be here to kind of join the panel to discuss how we can potentially work together. Like Ejima-san mentioned earlier, we have a partnership going where I think again it needs companies and from the various sectors, from various parts of the value chain, to come together to build that kind of entire ecosystem. So just happy to be here to have a chat.
Okay, thank you. So I think we're going to talk a lot about the future. I thought we might start by looking at what's already here, and maybe it's helpful to see that there are already some kind of use cases where this kind of technology is being applied to real problems. And Katsuro, I wondered if I could ask you to say a few words about the demonstration that your company's been involved with using health data.
Oh, sure. Okay, so now Toshiba has been working on within the Tohoku University and almost I think almost 5 years, and start with point-to-point transmission of the genome data. So that is very critical, and what's stolen and manipulated is killer. So now has been evolved, and now the gigabytes and the terabytes of those human genome data has been transferred over the QKD. And for researchers, feel very comfortable and feel safe to transmit the data. So in the past, I think they put in the hard disk and some big guys carry the data physically. So now more efficient, and it's ready. So now we have been moving up with those projects. Now phase 3 to connect the multiple point. So now that really helps for this not only data, for very critical video audio conference on a very secure manner, to share the data, share the conversation in multiple places. So now I think we are going to extend those reach to a more greater network, to connect to several institutes and hospitals, and then that is really help doctors, researchers to collaborate in a very secure and safe manner.
I guess we can all appreciate that genome data is probably one of the most important pieces of private data, as it really says everything about who we are. I wonder, I mean, there's been kind of various test cases of QKD for quite some time. So another example some people may be familiar with was in Switzerland. They have been using it for encrypting voting systems, actually for over a decade already. And maybe from the outside, you wonder if this is all ready to go, why aren't more people using it already? I don't know if I can invite Chunyang maybe to start there, and please, for our other panelists, do join in if you know.
Sure, let me take a step at it. I guess the way I see it, there's actually two levels of arguments, or kind of two levels of to discuss this question. I guess 2007, rightly so. Like at that time, and just remind you how the world looked like back then. I mean, there wasn't an iPhone. I mean, the iPhone was just starting, right? So just looking back, you just can't imagine how we are so hyper connected today versus just 13 years ago. That's one level. And also with this hyper connectivity, there's again a very raised level of awareness of the need for cybersecurity. We've seen a lot of hackings over the last 10 years or so. Edward Snowden in 2012-13 also revealed kind of nation states wiretapping on communications of private citizens, of companies and so on. So again, now compared to then, a heightened level of awareness of the need for security now and also going forward. So that's kind of the macro thoughts to set a backdrop. And kind of the more specific to the adoption question, why it has not been, QKD has not been adopted earlier than versus now. I think with a couple of the SGInnovate other sessions and panels, we've heard a lot about quantum computing. Really, that technology didn't take off, until literally about 3-4 years ago, when people are making very significant concrete steps towards scaling up a quantum computer. So that again adds in an added dimension where they put a little bit of urgency for industry, for users to think very hard about the problem of when a quantum computer could potentially break essentially most of our encryption today. So that's kind of two junction coming in, but I also argue that adoption is already, is accelerating today. We hear a lot about test beds and R&D, but just point to our friends in China. Ejima-san mentioned Quantum C-Tech. They listed in the Shanghai Stock Exchange in early July. On the first day of trading, they were already valued at $4.2 billion. So in terms of the adoption, I would say China is, leading the world in this direction. And the problem, I would say the stage we're at right now is a lot of education, of getting people, users, industry aware of the threats, the implications, and potential solutions. And it's up for them, everybody or every company have their own security policies. It's up to them whether they should adopt it now or later on. But I think at least the education part needs to be, be well underway, so that everybody has an informed kind of opinion and to make decisions around it.
Yeah, Chun-Yan, so I'd like to add one on top of that. So really, talking about adoption, yes, there's a lot of things to overcome, and also I think standardization is helping, and now QKD has a standard API, so it's very easy to deploy, and it's also now we are working on interoperability, so every QKD system to work together to build a network. So technically it's ready or being ready. So now in application and the use case is the key. And now we see critical social infrastructure data now travel not only widely used and IoTs for over 5G. Therefore, I think Korean SKT has already testing, and also we are working with a few other telecommunication partners to develop a robust 5G network. So you can think of if over the 5G, autonomous data is traveling in the world. If those hacked and your car maybe controlled by someone else,
yeah,
it's no way. And if social infrastructure network is hacked, such as for utilities, energies, or aviation data, that's going to be very critical to be protected. So. Yeah. So government, so we put a lot of effort on the government and the industry. So collaboration is, collaboration is going to be critical, and it's going to coming up soon, as you can see. So Europe has open QKD testbed, and for a lot of participants coming. So I think we're going to find a more useful use cases for you, and so it's coming.
Okay, I think I'm just seeing we already have lots of questions coming in from the audience, and I think the conversation is starting to cover some of them. So thank you. Virginia, you asked us about what organizations are at the forefront of collaboration with research institutes and about use cases. So I think we've just heard about a few. You also asked, is there a role in financial services? Would any of our panelists, like to expand on the kinds of organizations they think are the early adopters?
It's a good question, and so really, it's adoption come in order of the value of the data. for example, for militaries or intelligence or probably government, the value is so I would say priceless. So if they lose it or store it, it's really hard to imagine how much loss is going to be. So we see therefore so those government and the military board is going to be one of the early adapter. I think that is going to be the case in many countries and all over the world. And in the civil market, yes, we have spoken to sort of global financial institute, financial companies, and so they have handled the very critical data. If that is stolen and decrypted and used, they may lose tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars immediately. It's significant. Therefore, they're always updating on security technologies, and we have been in a trial with several our partners, and I think that they are going to deploy QKD technology as early as next year. So other stuff, other industries, yes, obviously healthcare, medical, it's because it's critical for the human beings. So we like to offer other industries, high-tech or industries to try to protect their particularly intellectual properties. So so testbed is a very encouraging part. So we welcome your interest and ambition to try these technologies. We can help you.
So I mean, maybe we can talk a little bit about the test beds that are existing around the world and what we're learning from them. So you've already said there's been a lot of adoption in China, and they have a 2,000 kilometer long link. We know in Europe they're building test beds. There've been a lot of announcements from the US over the past few weeks, where they are also investing in a quantum internet. So one question that we've got from the audience here is, when you're building these test beds, are you using existing fiber infrastructure, or is this all having to be built from scratch?
Well,
basically, I'll take that question. So yes, in order to make this technology practicable, you have to rely on standard commercial fiber, ITU standard fiber. You have to follow that because, take Singapore, for example, we have a very rich fiber network. Every home practically has a fiber connection. So if you want to, replace all that technology with something else, it would be impracticable. So what we want to do is make sure that the technology can leverage on existing technology, right? And optical fibers today are actually pretty good, especially for distributing quantum signals over the range of a city. So we try very often not to actually, use fibers that are research grade or too high end, because that makes the technology not easily to deploy. Then the other thing is we often need this test beds, fibers running in the wild, if you think about it, because quantum signals are still relatively fragile, okay? And so you want to make sure that you can actually test them in a representative environment. You can't do this on a bench top. You can't say, I want to test, quantum communication over 100 kilometers, and then, buy a spool of fiber and plug it on a bench top. Now you can do that. But what we have seen, the community has seen, is that the performance of a spool of fiber that goes around a coil that's about 10 centimeters in diameter is actually very different when that fiber is actually, rolled out and laid out in the ground. So, for example, it's actually much harder to understand the performance of a quantum communication system for a spool of fiber, because the band radius of the fiber is so small, it causes a lot of stress inside the fiber. And we found that the deployed fiber is actually much more relaxed from that front because it's straight. So, and you actually need this real world experience. The other thing I can point out, for example, is that we often think of optical fiber as something that's either deployed and it's very stable, and we're very used to the fact that we can get high-speed internet connectivity of it. But when it comes to the quantum signals, small changes in the fiber line are also very important. We have seen, for example, in Singapore, that the optical fibers would actually, expand or contract throughout the day, depending on the day and night cycle. And these things can actually have a performance impact on your communication system. So we really do need this fiber testbeds, and we're learning a lot of the physical layer properties. And I would say also at the same time, if you have this testbeds rolled out to the end users, you can actually run through the use cases much more quickly than if you just had something sitting on your benchtop.
Thanks, Alex. I guess a related question that has come in is, how do enterprises actually if they want to deploy this in practice? So this is from Loop Who. Is it a drop-in replacement, or do you have to change the security architecture? Whether Chunyang or Katsuro, would you like to comment on this?
Okay, basically QKD is add-on. I suggest to add on the current security layer because it's going to be unified. But the layer is going to be it depends on the policy to layer 1 to 3. But so it's depends on your system, your security policy, but you have basically the QKD. I suggest you to try the QKD on the most critical line to share. Then if you system is designed to deploy it, then it's you gradually overcome. So it's really tricky and to change overnight. Yeah. So therefore, we expect those trial and testing stability and the whole system design. Yeah. The implementation takes a year.
Yeah, and I guess to add on, Ejima-san showed that slide where you have the link, just a QKD link to trusted node to relay to kind of wide area network. I would say, the adoption of QKD or implementation of QKD, the complexity depends on what you want to achieve, immediately and over time. At a first cut, the simplest one, would be a link, using QKD to encrypt a link. And I would say that is relatively straightforward in terms of architecture and kind of essentially like it will be a drop-in, not even replacement, drop-in kind of layer that will interface with current infrastructure. And again, there's standards kind of APIs to do that. And doing just doing this one link, I would say is a relatively straightforward implementation. Obviously, then the complexity scales if you want more complicated applications or more complicated configuration.
I mean, maybe that's a good point to start talking about, how you go from these test beds to a kind of bigger global network and what the role of satellites are. So some interesting questions have come in about what exactly is the role of the satellite and how does that affect the internet speeds? I don't know, Chunyang, would you want to say and talk a little bit more in detail about how the satellite would fit into this bigger network picture?
Yeah, so the concept is essentially as follows, right? Right now, we're seeing commercial adoption of fiber-based QKD over localized area, like within a city, within a few hundred kilometers. I always like to draw the analogy. So on this call, right, but not only in Singapore, we have people from Japan, people from Myanmar, and all over the world essentially. So communication in general is not localized; it's very global in nature. The way, again, we see satellites as fitting in, and this would be crucial upcoming is, we can deploy QKD over a localized network, but naturally the next question will be, what if we want to include people from overseas, from other branches, and so on. And that's where, as a company, we're trying to achieve and target to set up that infrastructure to enable QKD, the encryption keys to be delivered across long distance, different sites in different countries. How that would eventually fit into kind of a seamless kind of architecture where you have a localized network. Let's say, within Singapore, you have 100 nodes, all QKD linked. Tokyo, you have 100 nodes, all QKD, encrypted. How would each of the user be connected to the other user in Tokyo? Can it all be meshed up and so on? That still takes some development, and that's a very active area of research. And part of the work that we plan to do is to evaluate and understand how this kind of cross-country or long-distance network would work. But the state of at least the QKD, satellite QKD part of thing is still, I would say, doing the first link demonstration. Like I mentioned, the link would be the lowest hanging fruit. Once you do the link, you add on the complexity and so on and so forth. So I guess globally, the companies and research institutes are still focused on getting the link done. And once the link done, we can build on it. And obviously, discussions and research are ongoing on how that network would look like.
So maybe I can just answer the point about how it affects internet speeds. I guess it's very important to understand that QKD is a buffered operation. You don't need that connectivity of key distribution to be on all the time. What will happen is that, for example, with the satellite, it will actually distribute keys when the weather is good, when the ground station can receive signals from the satellite. It will store those keys. And then the satellite would then go to another part of the world and then carry out the same operation. So the satellite would act as a relay, but the end users will actually be buffering the keys and then using them as needed. So it wouldn't affect your internet speed as such, even if it was encrypted using QKD technology.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Now we're getting so many questions. I'm afraid we're not going to be able to get to everyone before the end of the session. I guess we can try and follow up individually if any of you want to email your questions in. But let me just take one other kind of large topic area that there are a few related questions about. And this is about how it will kind of interface with applications maybe beyond security. So the most popular question, in fact, is beside providing additional security encryption, what additional benefits quantum internet will provide? And I guess some related questions people are asking a little bit about quantum computing. Will this network technology contribute to artificial intelligence, and how will it affect our day-to-day lives? Is it something that's going to benefit the masses? So I guess this is an opportunity for you to maybe speculate a little bit more into the future about how things may change and what we might see coming. So Alex, can I come back to you to start us off?
Okay, well, I wish I had a crystal ball, but essentially, what we think as a simple starting block is that if you have a distributed computing system, and it was a distributed quantum computing system, there would be a need to actually make sure that these things can actually exchange quantum information. So that's one of the use cases. Then the other thing that we think is important is probably distributed sensing. You can actually use quantum systems to make very sensitive measurement devices that can measure changes in sea level, water tables. So what you would like to do is maybe connect all of these things up in a way such that their effective sensor area is actually quite large. For that, you also need coordination at the quantum level as well. So these are just two basic ideas people have been thinking about. And what else can we do? We're still in the early days. And I guess we'll just have to run through all the possible examples.
Yeah, and I think just to add on, this is the kind of dreamer days of what that quantum internet could look like, and a kind of a interesting comparison is usually to the 1960s when the first internet first kind of sprung out of an experiment within the US on the DARPA network. to secure servers, and then you roll out to secure to transmit data between servers, and then to kind of more user sites, and the number of nodes just expanded over time. And look at the day, fast forward 50 years, we have Facebook, and all the kind of bells and whistles that we have today, which again, I think 50 years ago when the pioneers there, definitely didn't imagine any of these applications. I guess, it's a way to kind of side skirt that vision, specific questions. But I think we are in the early days where we understand, or we have a gut instinct that, quantum information or qubits being transferred around, if we are able to transfer qubits around, that we already identified a few specific applications that can be doable. There's just a lot more things that, we'll discover along the ways. And again, that's the kind of a knee-jerk reaction there.
So this is something that we can expect for the masses.
I guess again, back to the comparison. Maybe it's not like for like. One of the IBM founders was saying that in the world there's only going to be a market demand for 3 computers or something like that. I guess it's similar. Like we think that QKD for now is to secure. I mean, the concept now for QKD is to secure large nodes for large data pipes, backbone nodes, high value data. But that's us calling the shot. I mean, making a call now. But we never know. It's just difficult to predict.
Yeah, I would say quantum physics has already been contributing to the global economy for the masses even before this current phase of quantum technology. I mean, just think of the laser. You cannot describe a laser using conventional physics. And when the laser was invented, it wasn't really expected that it would actually be used to power our internet communications. So it has an impact on the masses in the end. It's just very difficult at this point in time to say in which particular path it will go. But we do believe that there will be greater good coming out of this.
There's maybe a related but slightly more technical question of, how do you define if a QKD system is commercially ready versus when it's still R&D? So, I mean, do you see that things are crossing this line? Or, I mean, we've heard that there are already things commercially ready. What still needs to happen on the R&D side?
In the QKD spaces, I think it's commercially ready, and so from R&D perspective, yes, still the key rate goes faster, and photon travels longer and repeat, and so it's that really those evolution of the technology really help QKD deploy in a very large scale. Then that helps service provider to reduce the cost and the more easy to adoption and the simpler adoption for government, large corporation, small to medium corporation, and at the end of the day, it's going to be a 2%. So probably not in the next few decades, everyone has a smartphone with already QKD technology built in, and that they don't need to be aware that everything is secured by quantum technology. That is the goal.
Okay, thank you. I see we're about running out of time. Just to end this, the last question, maybe the people who are coming up in the next generation of engineers and scientists to work on this. So someone asked, do they need a PhD in quantum information if they want to contribute to this field? And if we want to end by giving some advice to those who are going to help you make this vision a reality. Alex, would you like to jump in? Or do you know?
So let me start. Yes, we do need some understanding of how quantum physics will work. So we do have to improve education on the physics side of things. But what's more important is that there's going to be a vast variety of ways to contribute. for studying the fundamental concepts, discovering the new technologies and methods, you may need specialized training, right? But there's also some very nitty-gritty details that requires people of maybe, I would say, maybe a hacker mentality, where people actually want to understand how to implement some of the QKD systems more efficiently. So there's a whole variety of things, and it depends on what you like to do. You like to maybe program FPGA systems, for example. That's beneficial to quantum communications in general, because in QKD it's not just about the physical transfer of the quantum signal. You have to convert this quantum signal into a classical signal that the rest of the communication system can use. Can you do that more efficiently, right? How do you do that in a way that's cost effective and that is also safe at the same time? So for those things, you don't actually need like a PhD in quantum physics. So there's actually a big range of areas, and we would like to encourage people who have intellectual curiosity and want to explore this area to join everyone else in the community.
Yeah, and also just a quick add-on to that. Even today, right? Like, I mean, just working or working industry professionals. If you may be specialized in, let's say, classical networking, network security, and cybersecurity, and so on and so forth. Just the various disciplines, right? You need not necessarily have a PhD in order to incorporate QKD solutions or applications within the larger, let's say, telco or data center network or system. You may need a certain level of familiarity, which, I don't know, maybe like a short course in quantum physics or quantum communication or a master's degree that will help you kind of get enough of the essence of quantum to be able to incorporate products and services into the regular kind of industries. So I guess to Alex's point, that there is a wide range. If you want to go kind of make fundamental improvements, then yes, definitely a PhD and a research path is probably the way to do it. But within the larger industry ecosystem, there's a lot of kind of roles and different levels of expertise that you can gain in order to be effective and contribute to the whole ecosystem.
Okay, I think we're going to have to wrap up. Thank you very much for all of your insights, Alex, Katsuro, and Chunyang for joining us today, and SGInnovate for hosting us. And thank you too to the audience. I'm very sorry we couldn't get through all your questions. I've noted down what they are, and I think we'll use these to inform discussions about what events we should plan next. So please keep an eye with SGInnovate on what other quantum events are coming up soon. And thank you again for being here today.
Hey everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.